Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Please let me know if you could hear me, if you could see me. We have a chat going on. And please let me know if you could see me right now. And if my mic's working, you could say yes or no. Hello, everybody. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Please let me know if you could hear me. All right. So very good. So everything is working. We're gonna start. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Art. I'm a Python developer. So today we're going to be talking about how to use Python for web development. All right. So people still joining us. And today is a new experience for us. So we have two platforms going on. So we have Zoom and then we have YouTube. So people who are watching us on YouTube, thank you very much for joining us today. And you also have chat. So if you have questions, you could ask questions. And I'm not sure if I can answer them in real time because there is too much stuff going on, but I'll try. Also, after my presentation, we'll have Q&A question. I'll answer all your questions. All right. And by the way, I'm here in New York. Is everyone in New York? Where are people coming from today? So no one in New York, maybe someone in Chicago. All right, New York, yeah, South Carolina, Brooklyn, yeah, all right, okay. All right, so before we start, I have a couple of important questions. So first of all, do we have people who never ever programmed before, never ever coded before? Brand new to programming, brand new to coding. Anyone who got no idea what I'm talking about? Like, do we have people who got no idea what web development is? Anybody? Okay, so one person. Anybody else? If you could use chat, that would help me. All right, so it looks like we got a bunch of professional developers here tonight. That's good. So, okay, but do we have people who actually know how to code in Python? So I see that Skip 1947 is new to Python. So anybody else, like, and we'll talk about machine learning later, but I would just like to get some sense if we got people who are people program professionally. So we got people new to Python. All right. Do we have people who use any other programming languages like JavaScript maybe or something else? All right. Familiar with JavaScript. All right. MATLAB, all right, good. HTML, CSS, Java, very C++, great. Okay, very good. So everybody's here. And what we're going to be doing today, we're going to be talking about how to use Python for web development. Usually people open with jokes. I'm sorry, I don't have any jokes for you, but I'm going to open with a promise. So I promise that by the end of this session, you'll have a clear understanding how to use Python for web development. And when I say Python for web development, I actually mean Django. Of course, we're going to be talking about Django. That's a Python framework. And if you use Instagram or if you use Spotify, so that means that you use Django every day because Django used as an engine behind Instagram and behind many other web apps that we use every day. All right, so Django is very popular. I'm going to explain you why. I'm going to show you a couple of examples and you'll be able to ask me as many questions as you like. All right. Okay. So, and again, we have chats going on here. So if you have questions, you could ask me. You could send me your questions. If I won't be able to answer them here in the real time, then we'll do Q&A session a little bit later after my presentation. So without further ado, let me share my screen with you. And before we start, I would like to, before we start with actual code, because I'm about to show you a couple examples, I would like to do a little presentation about web development and explain you how these modern apps actually work. And I would like to discuss this process, backend versus front end, how these apps communicate to server, and that will help us to understand the role of Django in this process. All right. Okay, so I hope you could see my screen. Now, let me say a couple of words about myself. So my name is Art Yudin, and I'm the author of the book Building Versatile Mobile Apps with Python and the Restful Architecture. And I'll show you a couple of examples from this book today. Also, I'm the founder of Programming Bootcamp here in New York. It's called Practical Programming. We have offices in Chicago and in New York. And as soon as city opens, you're welcome to take our classes on campus in New York and Chicago if you're in New York. In the meantime, we do a bunch of different classes online. And this is our website, Program with Us. So I would really appreciate if you visit our webpage. So that's our webpage. And by the way, here we got bunch of free resources. So if later you want to take your Django project online, so step by step, we explain how to do this stuff. You can find this stuff here, how to take your project online and how to deploy your project. So all this information is here. So bunch of free information. And also, if you're watching us on YouTube right now, subscribe to our channel because we usually do free webinars every couple of weeks. We talk about Django, we talk about React, we talk about how to use Python for data science, machine learning, finance, pretty much everything. Now, also, if you're on our website, and basically what I'm going to be talking today, I'm going to be talking about Django, and I'll be explaining you how you could learn Django ins and outs. If you take Python, wrong course, sorry. If you take Python Developer Immersive course, that's the course that starts on February 22nd, Monday, next Monday. And here, this course for complete beginners. So here we first will teach you how to use Python. If you already know how to use Python, then next week we will teach you how to use Django. So it's really comprehensive course. We start with basics. We teach alphabet of programming from A to Z. Everything about Python. We teach how to program and how to compile your code in classes, object-oriented way of running Python. And then we gradually move to Django and we build a couple of projects. So at the end of the day, you'll have a couple of projects running online so that you could show them your potential employers. So please visit this page, so you'll find all this information here. So again, programwithus.com, you'll find all the information there. All right. Okay. So now let's take a look here. I hope you could see my screen well. Let me open, I think I lost that chat for a second. Let me open that chat. All right, so it's going to be running here. Okay. So first of all, I would like to explain the basics, and this will help us understand how Django fits into this schema of modern web applications. All right, now let's take a look here. So suppose there is a guy, someone like me, who is trying to fetch some information from a Facebook. All right, so I'm a Facebook user. So let's say I wanna open someone's profile, or maybe like post something, and pretty simple operation, right? We do that every day. So, but I would like to kind of break it down into smaller pieces so we could actually discuss how that process actually goes. So this guy like me using a Mac or maybe a smartphone, sending a request through the browser. So we all know how to use browsers, and you got a browser. So when you punching in that URL, facebook.com, basically what's going on under the hood, your browser sends a request. It's called HTTP request to a server, right? So it's pretty much you requesting for information. So then the request goes to a server. All right. Now, what is server? Server, in a nutshell, is just a huge computer, pretty much like this one, but much bigger, right? Now, server, comparing to this computer, is on 24/7. There is security, there is backup, but in a nutshell, it's just a computer with no screen. All right. And this is where you actually keep your app. So let's say if we talk about Facebook, so that Facebook is actually deployed on some kind of server, and I believe they got like bunch of servers all over the world. All right, cool. So then what happens? Then we have some kind of code that is actually stored on that server, and that code accepts requests, and based on that request, it manages this database. And we'll talk in details how this process actually goes, but it manages that data. And in this case, because I'm requesting for information, it fetches data from a database. So why do we need a database? Because we need to store this information somewhere. All right. So for example, if you want to fetch my profile, then I don't know, like my bio, my images, information about myself should be stored somewhere. And if you want to store something for a long term, you store this information in a database. All right. And this code will manage this database. It will perform CRUD. CRUD stands for create, read, update, delete. 4 major operations that you want to perform on a database, and we'll talk about that part in details. All right. So then, when you got this information, let's say Facebook example again, this information being sent back to a browser. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because this information most of the time comes as HTML, hypertext markup language. So it's pretty simple so far, right? So it comes as HTML, then your browser will convert this information into all these images, into, I know, text, and all the stuff that you usually see on the web page. However, this information, the same information, might be sent in form of JSON. All right, so what is JSON? And yeah, I saw that we got some people who actually use JavaScript, but JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So it's a completely different format for sending information. And this information might be sent as API. So what is API? API is application programming interface. So what is that exactly? Because this is a little bit confusing. Now, let me tell you a story. Recently, I was shopping for a fridge. Simple operation. You go to a store like Best Buy or something, and these days there are so many fridges that actually could help you in to solve everyday tasks. And what I mean by that, so suppose you're running out of milk, your fridge will place an order and will order milk for a grocery store. All right, kind of cool. A little bit expensive, but still you can get this kind of fridge. Now, if we talk about fridge, so how that fridge places an order. So it's pretty much the same operation. So that fridge will send the request to a server, and then that server for a grocery store will send the response. Now, you have to understand that, I mean, you definitely understand this part, but now there is a huge difference between browser that renders information for human beings like ourselves or fridge, because we humans we consume information with our eyes, right? So we consume information, we want to see stuff, we want this stuff to be nice, we want to see images, we want to see colors, styles, and so on. Now fridge on the other end just needs some text, and nobody needs to like work on styles for a fridge. Now that fridge is just an example, because also if information is sent to a smartphone like this information also would be coming in form of a text, and this form would be JSON, JavaScript object notation. Pretty simple format, pretty much like if you're a Python user, you probably heard about data structure called dictionary. It will be sent in form of a dictionary. If you're brand new to programming, have no idea what dictionary is, that's totally fine. I'll show you later. But the point I'm trying to make, there are two different formats. And sometimes information is sent as HTML and images and CSS, something like nice and like pretty. And in other cases, this information comes as APIs, as JSON, pretty simple text, no images, no colors, no styles, nothing. All right, just text. And in some instances, on the receiving end, there is a browser. And sometimes it could be just a device like a fridge or a smartphone or something like that. Now, both of those receivers, they're actually called clients. So there is a client and then there is a server, and they communicate. All right, and they exchange messages, because when your browser sends a message to a server, you won't believe it, but that message is actually sent as a regular message on WhatsApp. All right, so there is a header, there is a title, and then there is some data. All right, and it's pretty simple. And then server would send some response as another message to a client. All right, that's pretty much it. So the part that is responsible for all these cool things that you usually see in your browser is called the front end. And the part that's responsible for managing a database, receiving requests, managing requests, and fetching data from a database on the server is called backend. Now, what's going to happen if you add them together? And you probably heard that term, full stack development. And sometimes you hear people saying, yeah, I'm a full stack developer. So what exactly does it mean? It means that that guy can do the front end and could like write HTML and CSS and JavaScript code, and backend also as some kind of backend language. Now, obviously, today we're doing Python, so I'm going to be talking about Python. So if we take a closer look at this hamburger, so what we see here, so bottom part is pretty much a server part. And here we got a bunch of hosting options like Amazon being the most popular one, AWS. Then we got Azure, Microsoft, Google, all these giants. And unfortunately, we don't see here local guys like DigitalOcean, my favorite company. It's not like some kind of ad or anything, but DigitalOcean, that's what I usually use for my projects. Why? For two reasons. So first of all, I live in New York and I want to support local businesses. That's the first part. Second part, you'll be surprised that, but they actually, their service is much cheaper than Amazon or Google or anybody else. So that's why I prefer to use them. All right. Now then, as a meat, we got that back-end programming languages that you want to use for web development. All right. So PHP, cool language. Ruby, I don't think people don't use Ruby anymore. Please let me know if you think differently. But who uses Ruby? While you could use Python. Python is a versatile language. And in my opinion, it's the best. I'll be honest to you. Now, then we got Java or C#, something like that. So you see, you got a bunch of options. Now, if you ask me, I would say Python would be the most popular one, but that's just me. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. And I'll talk about all pros and cons of using Python for web development. So then as cheese, we got these databases. And surprise, surprise, if we talk about Python, so Python could be used with any database like PostgreSQL, MySQL, NoSQL, like pretty much any database. Oracle, if you want to use Oracle, so then you could use Oracle as your choice for a database. Python, again, would work with all of them. All right. And for example, if you already have a database and you don't want to move that data anywhere, so what you could do, you could actually plug in existing data into Django. All right. So Django would work with all existing databases. It's really, really versatile. And here we got pretty much APIs and internet itself. This is how you exchange information. And the top part is a front end. So front end again, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now here we have plain vanilla JavaScript, but I believe nobody these days use just plain vanilla JavaScript and build everything from scratch, because there are a bunch of really cool solutions. Now, Jquery, yeah, like 5 years ago, I used Jquery. I know some people still use it. Don't want to offend anyone, but there are much better solutions, like I would say modern solutions. So if you ask me, I would go with the Angular or React. And again, I think React is more popular than Angular. This is just me, because I personally use React. I mean, if we had that conversation 5 years ago, I would say Angular, but these days I would definitely go with React. React is a winner. I'm not going to dive too much into React today because that's not the topic. So React will do probably a couple of weeks from now. But again, you need some kind of cool front end for Django, like Angular or React. Okay. Or again, you could use JavaScript. I mean, you could use plain vanilla JavaScript or jQuery, but again, this is just me, and that's my personal opinion. All right, so that full stack. All right, now I'm sorry, I have one presentation for React and for Django, and again, like I promised, I'm not going to dive too much into the React stuff, but you see that React clearly is the winner, and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they actually use React as a front end. So getting back to Instagram, Instagram is a best case for Django because backend is written in Django and the front end React. So that's what I do for a living. I love this combination. So today we're going to be talking about backend. All right. So again, we're skipping React part. Why Django? Oh, okay. So first of all, and here I just got a few companies that actually using Django as a backend. Instagram, Spotify, YouTube also uses Django. Dropbox uses Django. Eventbrite, if you're familiar with that website where you can find a bunch of events, they also use Django as a backend. And this is typo, so later I'll change this to Django. So, but there are some other companies like NASA uses Django as a backend, and like a bunch of other companies. If you Google it, you'll find list that long. All right. So Django is really, really cool. Now, key features. So first of all, what is Django? So Django is object relational mapper. What it means exactly what I told you before. So Django will manage that database. And later today, I'll show you the actual code and you'll see that stuff in action. All right. So that's what ORM means. Now, Django uses Nbc Architecture. So Nbc stands for Model View Controller, and I got a slide, and we'll take a closer look at Nbc Architecture. But I believe like 90% of all web apps, they actually use Nbc Model, Model View Controller. All right, so Model View Controller Architecture. And that rest 10%, they use pretty much the same, but in different flavors. All right. So I would say that most of the modern web apps, they're running on MVC, and you need to understand that. And Django is classic MVC architecture. And I'll show that stuff in action. Now, also, I was mentioning React and Angular before. However, Django also comes with a built-in template system. So if you don't want to use React or if you don't want to use Angular, so you could actually use HTML. So Django comes with templates, HTML templates, where you could use HTML, JavaScript, and CSS just to make that stuff really, really nice. So if you're an HTML developer and you want to learn back-end development, that would be a perfect combination because you could actually combine HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, like plain vanilla JavaScript with Django. So you just create HTML files, you add CSS, you add JavaScript, and you're ready to go because all that stuff could be attached as templates to Django. All right. So that's like really, really convenient. Now the only reason why I'm not using templates very often lately, simply because with React, I'm in love with React. And for all my projects, I would rather go with React than with existing templates. But sometimes you could actually combine existing templates and React. That would work perfectly. All right, now URL design. In Django, there is a thing called URL dispatcher. So pretty much like based on these URLs, and I'll show you an example later. You could fetch information from a database. So, and you do that through URL dispatcher. Now, again, what I'm doing right now, I just want to outline them, and then I'll show you in details how that stuff works and what exactly do I mean by that stuff. All right. Now, also, Django offers fast development. So it will take you literally 5-10 minutes to launch a project. Like literally, like simple one, just like give me 10 minutes and you could do that stuff. All right, now, I mean, again, if you have experience, you could actually create a simple project in 10-15 minutes, you'll be ready to go. Another thing, you could scale it. And that's usually a problem for other, framework. You probably heard names like Flask, and you're probably wondering why should I use Django if I use Flask? So the answer is really, really simple, because Django comes with everything, and Django is key turn solution. Because in Django, you have authentication, authorization, database, templates, URLs, and everything in one place. Now in Flask, and keep in mind that we're talking about modern web apps, and pretty much every modern web app requires authentication, right? You wanna register your users and you want to authenticate your users. Now, to do the same stuff with Flask, you would need some kind of third-party solution. And that could be a problem, because then you need to learn third-party solution, and sometimes could be a hassle. Now, in Django, everything comes with Django. So authentication, cookie management, because your web browser accepts cookies and you want to manage them, and a bunch of other stuff. So Django is a key turn solution. So everything is in one box. You don't need to shop for anything else unless you want to do that kind of stuff. And it's really easy to use. So for example, if you're a startup and if you're trying to build something like just to show potential investors, like a prototype, maybe you're trying to build a prototype to raise some money, so Django would be your solution. Or maybe you like big guys like Instagram, so again, Django would be your solution. So it's really easy to scale, and that's why I like it. All right. All right, so Django comes with built-in modules. I'll show you what I mean in a second. Now let's take a look at this Nbc model or Nbc architecture. And this is a classic structure of Django or any modern web app. All right, so Nbc, Model View Controller. So for those of you who don't know, let me explain you what model is. So model, it's a cool word for database. So instead of model, you could think of a database. That's pretty much schema. If you're a little bit familiar with SQL, you understand that you got to design a database, you got to design schema. Now, for those of you who don't know that stuff, that's really simple. Suppose at your work, in your department, you have a database and it contains information about all employees in that department or in the company. Now, you got fields like first name, last name. You need to store information, I know, like social security, employee ID, and maybe some other information like position within the company, right? So you need to create these fields. So that's what we call model, and that's what we call schema. So model, schema, you could actually use them interchangeably, but in Django or in other frameworks, they call this thing model. So think of model, think of a database. All right. So this is a relation between actual code and database. All right. Now controller is simple. Sometimes it's not that simple. Piece of code that actually performing these CRUD operations. And CRUD operations stands for create, read, update, delete. And let me flip to that part, and then I'll get back to MVC. So CRUD. So CRUD stands for create, read, update, or delete. Sometimes R stands for retrieve. It depends. Some people call it read, some people call it retrieve. But potato, right? So now let me tell you what I mean. So suppose you want to get access to Facebook and read my profile. So in this case, you'll be performing read or retrieve, because you're retrieving information from a server, you're retrieving information from a database. So that would be R. Then let's say you want to post your own post. Let's say, or maybe you want to post a comment. So when you send in data to a server, when you want this data to be stored in a database, you're performing this type of operation called create. You're creating a record. And then maybe you're not happy with your post or comment, so then you want to update it. All right, so then you want to add something, maybe remove something, maybe add more information. So you performed update. And the last one is pretty simple. If you're not happy with your comment, or maybe you're not happy with your post, you could just delete it. So that stands for CRUD. So getting back here, so this controller will accept requests from a user. So that, and again, it could be a guy like me, or like someone like you, like a human being, or it could be a device like a smartphone or like a fridge. So these we actually call the client. It's not a guy per se, because it might be some kind of device. All right. So this device or this human or this client sends information to a controller. So again, controller is a piece of code that will be performing CRUD operations on a model, on a database, based on your request. And again, suppose we're trying to read some kind of blog or post or something like this. Based on this request, controller will retrieve information from database, from model, and will send that response, and will send this response to view. Okay, view this is where it gets interesting. So there are a bunch of different options how you could actually do view. Now, if we talk about Django, and I already mentioned that Django comes with the built-in HTML templates. So to render this information, to render a post or a blog or something, or someone's profile, you could use built-in HTML templates. All right. So, and then you're done. If you want to do something fancy, like something fancy I'll show you today, maybe you want to use React Native, because what you're trying to do, you're trying to send this information to a smartphone or a fridge. Then this view would be done with React, Angular, JavaScript, or React Native. It depends. So this is the moment where I'm going to explain you the main advantage of Django. You could have the same backend, and then you could have multiple front ends. So what exactly do I mean? It means that you could have the same code as a back end, as an engine, and then you could have desktop website, desktop version of your web app. And then you could have another version for a smartphone. Now, long time ago, when we didn't have React Native, people at startups would argue, hey, like I got this great idea. I want to build that app that will save the world or will make the world a better place. Should I start with a desktop version or should I build a solution for a cell phone? So if we're talking about cell phones, then there is a question. Should it be iOS or should it be Android? And that question was very, very important one because obviously startups, they don't have much resources like giants like Facebook. For example, because Facebook might have a bunch of different teams and they actually have a bunch of different teams and each team would be responsible for different versions of the app. All right. Now, when you start up, you don't have much money. That's a huge problem because you have no idea, like you cannot afford to have a bunch of different teams. And then you got to make your choice. And funny thing is in some countries, let's say in Africa, people don't use laptops. Why? Because they don't have laptops, but they all use smartphones. So penetration of smartphones is much higher than computers. So it's more expensive to own a computer, let's say in Africa or in some in Asia or maybe in Latin America in some countries. So, but you still want to issue an app that would be used, let's say, in Africa. So in that case, obviously, you want to start with a mobile version. Now, these days, using Django, you don't have to think about stuff like that because you could build one app that would be perfectly serving desktop version and iOS version and Android version. All right. And you could also attach like, I know, some kind of version for Apple TV. So the point I'm trying to make, these days, you don't need to make a choice. You write your code once, and then you can attach any front-end solution that you want to use. And another best part about it, you could have multiple front-end solutions. That's the best part about Django. All right. So getting back to this page, MVC, for a view, we could either have templates that come with Django, or we could have React or iOS, Swift, if you like, or any other solution for a smartphone. All right. And since we're talking about smartphones, I would definitely go with React Native because React Native will allow you to have one JavaScript code, both for iOS versions and platforms and for Android versions. You see, again, you're saving money. You don't need to hire two teams. All right. So that's the main part. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about REST and RESTful architecture. And I'll show you examples of what I mean in a second. Now, you already know what Crud is. Again, this is how you send and retrieve information to a database. But to do that in cleaner way and to manage this information, you need to use REST services, RESTful architecture. So what it means that every action that you're trying to do, or any action for any information that you're trying to get or send, would be handled by a special method. Like, for example, when your browser receives information from a server, you're performing get method. So you actually use get method, and that get method will get information from a server. Now, if you're trying to post some information on the server, then Crud gets into play, and that Crud will use post method. That this post method will actually grab that data and will write that data, will send that data to the server, and will write that data into a database. Now, there are more than post, get, put, delete. There are 8 of them, as far as I remember. You could Google them, but these 4, the major ones. So get and post you use every day. Every day you open some kind of web page, you immediately use get method. If you logging in, it means that you typing in your username and password. So this action would require post method. You see, now you use them every day. And that's what I'll show you in a second. So Restful API, application programming interface. I explained it to you, but now I'm going to show it to you in action. All right. And by the way, this is my username for Twitter. On Twitter, I usually post a bunch of useful information, and also we announce our webinars and all information you can find there. If you have any questions, let's say after this session, you could find me there on Twitter. So Art Yudin _NYC. Okay, it's good. That being said, let's take a look at APIs. So what is API? So here I have a simple example, and I'll explain you how this example actually works in a second. But I would like to explain you what API. Now, API, you see, that's an example of API. So this API was specifically designed for smartphones. So if you want to get this information, and this information is actually listings of pizza places in New York and Chicago. So let's say, so this is kind of like smaller version of Yelp. So let's say if you want to order pizza, you need to find a place. So how do you find a place? Yelp got all this information, right? So this is a simple example that kind of mimicking Yelp in some way. And this information is a classic API. Why? Because this information was designed to be consumed by some kind of device. And here I'm talking about smartphones. And by the way, you could open this information if you go to this website, pizza-pizza.com/API. So this is a public website I have created, and this is pizza-pizza.com API. Now, this website, powered by Django, sends APIs. And we'll see how this information could be consumed in a second. But you see, you also could send like images. So for example, if you want to see these images, you could send them as URLs where this information actually hosted. So where you can find these images. So this is a classical API. All right, cool. Now, how that stuff does work. All right, so first I'm going to show you simple code for this project. And if you know Python, it will be you'll probably understand this part. But if you don't know Python, that's totally fine, because I'll explain you everything. So first of all, when you launch new Django project, what it does, like I told you, it comes with all modules. It will create all these modules for you. Obviously, you'll call them something else. In this case, they're called pizza project because I was building a simple example for pizza places, for pizza shops. That's why I called it pizza project. But obviously, you could call it whatever you like, right? So let's talk a little bit about that structure, Nbc Model View Controller. Okay, so first I want to start with the model. So you see when you launch a Django project, it comes with this file models.py. Py is extension for Python files. So because Django is written in Python, and this is where you'll define your schema for your database. Again, if this schema word scares you, freaks you out, then like pretty much we're defining fields for our database. We're creating database from scratch. And since I want to store information about pizza shops, I'm kind of thinking, all right, so what attributes would I need to use? Okay, so any pizza store should have a name. All right, good. So you see here, I'm defining pizza name. And the best part about Django, so here you need to know just one language, Python, one programming language, Python. You don't need to deal with the database. So let's say when I just launch project, Django will, by default, will create a database for me from scratch. And if I don't like it, I could actually use any other database. So for example, if you already have information about all these pizza stores stored in Oracle, you could actually connect Oracle to Django. And surprise, surprise, you don't need to know how to use Oracle because Django will take care of that stuff. Or for example, if you want to use PostgreSQL, again, you don't need to like really know the syntax, because you got to know how to program in Python, and Django will be managing that stuff. So you don't have to know any SQL. That's the best part for me, because although I know SQL, I hate it. For me, it's much, it would be simpler to use Python code than to deal with SQL. All right. So then I want to provide information about each pizza place. So here I'm defining fields for street, city, state, zip code, website, phone number, description of the place. All right. And also we could pass images. So you could actually store images. And obviously, if you want to make it nice, every pizza store should have like some kind of logo, some kind of like front end image. And you can actually connect databases. So in this case, I created another schema for images. So the idea is, let's say if you're on Yelp or if you use Google reviews, you go to some kind of place, let's say pizza place, and you're really happy about what you see, and you start taking pictures. And then you want to send these pictures to a database so other people would see them. Now, if you're not happy with the pizza place, if it's too dirty or food is terrible, again, you want to take images of that stuff so you could send that stuff to a database so others could see that stuff. All right. So that's why I have created this separate model where you could store images. And keep in mind, this is just small project. That's not like working app. This is just like a small model, just to keep it simple. So this is model. So now views. This is what in our case, and let me just show you again. I'm showing you the code for MVC. The first thing was model. Now we get to controller. So if we talk about controller, this is how controller would look like. So now this controller will perform this CRUD. So here we defined what Django calls views. Let's say to first you want to fetch all listings for all pizza places that you have in your database. So we call this pizzeria list view. And again, like you could call it anything else. For example, if you have like a library and you wanna show all the books that you have in your library, then you'll call this book view, and you'll be fetching information about books. Or if you build in, and by the way, Django is really popular to build online shops, online stores. So for example, if you want to render all your products that you currently have or in your store, then that would be the place where you will be fetching information for all products that you currently have in your store, right? So you call this list view. Then we have this retrieve view, and this view will be responsible for showing details for each product. Again, if we talk about this example of online store, now suppose you see some kind of product that you like, but you want to take a closer look, you want to see details, you want to see sizes, you want to see all available colors and all this kind of stuff. So then you would click on that product, and then it will take you to next page, and that's where you'll see all these details. So these like 3 lines of code will be responsible for all details. You see, really, really easy to use. And then we got more classes here. So for example, if you want to like add new pizza place to our database, then you'll be using create method and so on. So this file is pretty much a controller. It's responsible for doing that Crud thing, managing database. And here we have a URL dispatcher. So what is URL dispatcher? Oh, it's really simple. Suppose you have a domain name like programwithus.com, and then you want to see courses. Oh, okay. So what are they offering? Let me show it as an example. Now, okay, so this is our website. And if you click here, you see this is pretty simple URL, programwithus.com. And now, if you want to see all courses, Python courses, if you click here, you see we got this extension, topics/Python courses. So the point I'm trying to make, when this /Python courses -NYC comes to a server, because that part is being sent as a part of request, that URL dispatcher will try to match that courses-NYC to all available options here. And based on that option, it will call a particular method from a controller. And that's like how this stuff would work. So server receives a request for information. Based on that request, it will call a method. So then this method will be coming from views from here, and each method will perform some kind of operation. Now, one more time. Suppose you want to get all pizza places and you live in New York. So then it's going to be, let's say, like pizza places-NYC. And that would trigger a method that would filter a database and would fetch all pizza places in New York City by filtering database. And suppose you're in Chicago, so then you could do like pizza places-Chicago, and then based on that Chicago name of URL, some other method would be triggered, and that method would be filtering database for Chicago places. That's URL dispatcher. All right, so that's an essential part. And again, like the cool part is everything in one place. Now let me show you something else. Here we have settings, and in settings we already have apps. So what do they mean by apps? Now Django itself is a huge app, but also you could attach other apps. Like, for example, we need to authenticate users. To authenticate users, we need some authentication app. If we were talking about Flask, I would say, yeah, then you need to kind of use some kind of third-party solution. But here, you see, they already got this module authentication that would be responsible for authenticating users. All right. Now then, suppose you want to send messages, or surprise, surprise, Django already got this built-in module for messages. Then you need to manage web browsers, all those cookies, all that information. So in some other instance, you would be using third-party solution. Here, you already got all this stuff. So the point I'm trying to make is that it already comes with bunch of built-in solutions. And believe me, you don't want to build authentication and login stuff from scratch. So first of all, it requires a lot of work. That's one thing. Another thing is that obviously you'll do worse job than people who doing that stuff, that working on that stuff for, I know, like years. Because Django takes security very, very seriously, and the authentication and all this security stuff is really good. So for example, they won't let you to use simple password like 1, 2, 3 or QWERTY as a password, because they take security really seriously. So the point I'm trying to make, everything is here, and you could just grab and use this information. So, and also here you could, so this is where you'll be plugging in your database. And by default, Django will create a SQLite database for your stuff. So you don't have to think about it. Now, some people think that SQLite is too light. So let me tell you something. As far as I know, the first version of Facebook was running on SQLite, so it's not that light, believe me. Now you could use SQLite as a default option, or you could actually connect any other database, like I told you before. So you could replace it with PostgreSQL, you could replace it with Oracle, or like SQL, what they use, like some other SQL that you like, all right? So you could actually, like, it's really versatile, so you could actually add pretty much anything. And also you could manage time zones and a bunch of other stuff. So if you're planning to accept payments online, suppose you're trying to build a web store, that would be the file settings.py, where you'll place all this payment information, all right? Okay, so, and this is pretty much what you will get with Django. And then you could build something like this. And I know many of you like not really impressed by this stuff. They're saying, hey, like, yeah, that's kind of cool, but I mean, I'm not planning to read all this stuff. I want to see that in action. All right, so let me show you that stuff in action. So here I have a simulator. iOS simulator. So pretty much just to show you that you could read this information. And in this case, I'm using React Native. You could build the front end. So you see, I know that it's simple front end, but still you could do much better if you're HTML and CSS user. But the point I'm trying to make, so these APIs were specifically designed to be consumed by some other device. In this case, we're talking about cell phones. All right, so cell phones and iOS. So let's say you click here, and then bam, you see all these images for this Brava pizza place. Or let's say if you're in Chicago and you're saying, oh gee, I want to see what it's look like in pizza pizza owner. So you click on pizza owner, and here you see all these images. Now, at the same time, using these APIs, you could actually attach separate desktop version. You see, it's really versatile. So you could have one engine under the hood, and then you could actually attach as many front end solutions as you like. That's the main advantage. That's the beauty of Django. And all you have to do, you have to understand how to use Django, and you got to know a little bit of Python. So now probably some of you have this question right now, like I have no idea how to use Python. All right. So if that's the case, we'll teach you how to use Python, because in our course in Python Developer Immersive, so the first week, what we start from scratch. If you never ever coded anything in your life, even VCR. So first of all, good news, like nobody uses VCRs anymore. But if you never ever coded anything in your life, we will teach you how to code from scratch, completely from scratch, like starting with nothing. All right. So in the first week, we will be teaching you how to code in Python. We will be teaching you that alphabet of programming. Second week, we will teach you how to code in object-oriented way. Because as you probably notice, all code that I got in my little presentation is encapsulated as classes. So, of course, in Django, you could actually use functions, but I prefer to use classes. That's a professional way how it should be done. However, if you don't want to start from scratch, so then you could just take one part. You could actually split this Python Developer Immersive into a couple of parts. And let's say if you want to start slowly, so then you could just take Python Immersive. So for example, if you're just interested in Python and you're not sure if you should go whole 9 yards, you could start just with Python and learn how to code, and then you could make the rest of decisions later. So later, if you feel like, oh, now I want to build websites or web apps, so then you could actually take second and third part. So we usually split all our courses in a couple of parts, so you could take them as blocks. If that's the case, so here you could click and talk to Amit, and she'll explain you everything and will give you all the options. And by the way, I know that right now we're kind of in the middle of this COVID crisis. And if you think that that price a little bit steep for you, so first of all, we got a bunch of discounts, and you could actually split this price into separate into a payment plan. So you could click Amit, you could talk to Amit and ask her about all these options, how you could actually take credit, or how you could actually split it into a bunch of payments. So like we're really versatile about that. And again, you could go step by step. So this is what we do. We teach how to build modern web apps and how to get jobs as web developers. Even if you never ever coded anything in your life, and by nothing, I mean even VCRs, all right? So let me stop right here. Let me stop right here and let me get to Q&A session. So probably by now you have a bunch of questions. And again, let me remind you that you could always send me a question even after the session on Twitter or Instagram. So guys, I see I got two chats going on. One is on YouTube and the other one in Zoom. So if you have questions, now would be a time to ask me all your questions, and I'll do my best answering them. Any questions about anything that we have discussed so far? Oh, okay. I get this question all the time. So people asking me why Python is so popular. So Python is really popular for a couple of reasons. Now, first of all, it's easy to learn. You could learn Python in a matter of a couple of months. I'm not kidding. And modern economy requires people who could actually code. So that's why you could actually get a job or like get a promotion by learning how to code in a couple of months. That's the first thing. Second thing, Python is really popular because Python comes with a bunch of different extensions. So for example, you could get connected to Facebook, you could build a Twitter bot, you could actually use Python for data science, you could plot data with Python, you could do whatever you like. So Python is really versatile language, and comparing to other languages, you could use a bunch of different things with Python. So one day you could be a data scientist, next day you could do web development. So Python is really versatile. Oh, I got like really great question from Ryan. Why the controller in views? Great question. So Django decided to go their own way, and they actually called controller views. And I believe somewhere on their website in documentation, in Q&A session, they explaining that, and they're saying that although a classical model called Nbc, and by view they actually mean templates. In Django, view.py file manages templates and manages outcome of the data that we're sending back to user. So that's why in Django, by default, all your controller methods would be stored in views.py. Okay, so people saying that YouTube talked over a lot of your Zoom presentation also. All right, so guys, I'm a little bit new to, YouTube, and by that I mean that I'm kind of new to streaming on YouTube. So let me see if we have any questions here. So let me know if, so far I don't see many questions here. Can we review the presentation over the weekend? And thank you for doing this. Yeah, sure. So I don't have online version right now, but I could send you a link to this presentation, and just please tweet me, and I'll send you that link later, probably tomorrow. Can we do quantum Python for fintech? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. Because first of all, now I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but you could do whatever you like with Python. So first of all, you could build algorithmic trade models with Python. Or if you're planning to automate stuff, you could use Django, and you could deploy Django, and you could build the whole fintech app. So believe me, I'm a fintech developer. I know what I'm talking about. So I actually build market scanners and algorithmic trade models using Django. So the best part is, let's say you want to build an app for fintech. And these days for fintech, you need to use modern solutions like machine learning. And machine learning is done in Python. So what you could do, you could actually simply add Python solutions to Django, because Django is written in Python, you see, and that's how you build a fintech app that's going to be hosted online and do stuff. All right. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? Any other questions? All right. So we're about to wrap up here. So if you have no questions, yeah, and definitely we could have a lunch in New York, and you could use that website, Pizza versus Pizza, to find a great pizza place in New York or Chicago, or maybe you'll add your own place. So we're about to wrap up here. So if you have more questions, you could always go to our website, programwithus.com, and you could actually ask your questions on that website, or if you have questions and you want to ask me directly, please welcome. You could find me on Twitter, Art Yudin _NYC, or Instagram, or if you're on YouTube and you have questions. So I guess we're going to keep that video on that channel. So you could also send us questions on YouTube, and sign up for that channel, because we're going to do more things like this in the future. So I believe a couple of weeks from now, we're going to do another presentation on React, and I'm going to be talking about React and React Native, and that's like really cool thing. All right. All right. So thank you very much. So that's pretty much it for today. And let me know if you have any questions in future. You know where to find me. All right. Have a good night. Thank you.